So, thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. I appreciate you tuning in today for this virtual event. Um, Again, my name is Eric Jump. I'm the vice president for the Paperweight Collectors Association. This is part of the ongoing virtual series that we do. We're trying to do it quarterly for now. So if you guys have an idea, I'm just going to throw that out right now. If you guys have a presentation that you guys want to hear, or if there's a presentation that you guys want to give, please feel free to reach out to us and let me know. I'd love to sit and chat with you guys and see what kind of ideas you have. Um, I'm really grateful to Dana for putting the time in to make this happen today. Dana, he's an incredibly knowledgeable and passionate collector. He's served the paperweight community in a number of ways. He's volunteered to be on various committees. He's he's been a speaker at our events. He's a contributing author to the Bulletin and any number of newsletters out there. He's also served as an expert on the identification clinic that we have at convention. And he's also admin of the Less Familiar Paperweight group on Facebook. It's Less Familiar European Paperweights if you guys are interested in those. And then he's also president of the Northern California Paperweight regional group there in Northern California, based out of uh, San Francisco area. Without further ado, I will hand it over to Dana. And
Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming, so to speak. Um, I'm going to be speaking today about paperweights as landscapes. So first, what do I mean by that, paperweights as landscapes? Most representations of nature in paperweights are on a small scale, such as one or more flowers, like this cliche pansy, or this orchid from Paul Stankard, or a collection of flowers, like this bouquet from Chris Bozzini, or this mixed flower bouquet from Andrew Byers. Fruit were a popular subject for Antique San Luis and New England Glass Company and Boston Sandwich, and have also been represented by more contemporary makers like Demel Tarsitano and David Graeber. Animals can be represented, sometimes with a very sparse background, if any, sometimes with a much more complex background, such as this snake from Victor Trabucco with the rose and flowers, and this weight by Kathy Richardson with a newt on a very detailed forest floor. I would call these last two environmental weights. So usually the representation is on a fairly small scale. At the other extreme, there are weights representing entire planets, like the Lundberg Studio World Weights, representations of other planets in our solar system, and Josh Simpson's imaginative, possibly inhabited planet paperweights. So very small scale, very large scale. What I'll be talking about are paperweights which come somewhere in between. That's what I mean by landscape paperweights. They are not that common. I'll be showing you a lot of different ways in which they are represented in paperweights and try to relate them to the sorts of paperweights you may be more familiar with. So that's the what. Why? Why am I interested in landscape paperweights? Well, I grew up in Marin County, and we spent a lot of time hiking on Mount Tamalpais, or Mount Tam, and Point Reyes, which is probably one of the reasons why landscapes are my favorite subject in just about any media. Could be painting, photography, fiber arts such as quilts or hooked rugs, ceramics, you name it. Tom Killian is one of my favorite artists. He also grew up in Marin County, and he uses traditional Japanese woodblock printing techniques to represent landscapes, many of them from Marin. If you're interested in seeing more of his work, I took these images off his website with his permission, and if you look for them online, you can find a lot more. The most common paperweights with landscapes are souvenirs. This isn't a paperweight, but I have seen one like it. Before the Golden Gate Bridge was constructed, tourists could take a ferry from San Francisco to Sausalito and then take this train from Mill Valley up to top of Mount Tamalpais into Muir Woods. It ran from 1896 to 1930 and was known as the crookedest railroad in the world. Years ago, I saw a paperweight like this souvenir with this image on eBay. Unfortunately, I was outbid on it, but it's on my wish list, so if you ever see it, please let me know. But I do have several other souvenir paperweights from Mount Tamalpais, which probably date to that same era, 1930 to back to the turn of the century. When they built the railroad, they also built a tavern at the top of the mountain. The tavern's on the right, and there's a dance hall on the left. Here's a flyer from 1913 advertising a moonlight excursion, including dinner and dancing. From the end of the railroad, they could take a short hike up the top of the mountain. There, on a clear day, you can see the entire Bay Area and sometimes even the Sierra. The Profile Rock is a geological formation on the trail which circles the peak. The Profile Rock is still there, but the railroad and the tavern are long gone. But these souvenir paperweights sort of preserve the historical record of what was once there. This is this type of paperweight, those last two, was more commonly used for advertising. A photograph or design was imprinted on a thin layer of white glass, and then that was attached to the back of or joined really at the back of a clear glass blank to give the appearance of milk glass. This particular weight was made by Barnes and Abrams Company of Syracuse, New York. They patented this method around 1880. There are lots of other kinds of souvenir weights with landscapes. This is one of my favorites. This is these are large ones. This is 7 inches long. They have either paintings or colorized photos of different locations. This is the Garden of the Gods, which is outside of Colorado Springs. You can see Pikes Peak in the background. So this is what you could see at the Garden of the Gods 100 years ago. When I was there earlier this summer, this was my view. But if you take a little effort, walk around a bit, you can still get some nice views, get away from the people there. A more common type of souvenir paperweight had a painting typically either glued to the back of a glass blank, like this Rocky Mountain National Park one, or encased under a hollow glass dome. Some of them, like this Niagara Falls one, were for a specific location, whereas others had more generic images. This same sailfish design, which was advertising Miami, Florida, was also used for Daytona Beach, Florida, and quite possibly for other locations in Florida or on the coast also. There are many European landscape souvenir weights like this one. This is for the pier at Ryde on the Isle of Wight. Again, a painted image is affixed to the back of a glass blank. Since these can be quite old and the back is not secure, often these have damage like this. You can see it where the image has been peeled off. So there are many other types of souvenirs of landscapes, but I only have a few of them in my collection. I'm more interested in the sorts of paperweights that most of us PCA members collect. So this type was made in the second half of the 19th century. The are these are European weights that are engraved as souvenirs for different locations, often for resorts or spas. Baden was a popular location for these. There are a number of Baden ones. Uh, have a close-up of a couple more of these, or the same ones actually. I This is a scene at Baden. You can see some building. Looks like Favorit by Baden. I'm not sure what that means. Name of the location. Swans in the pond in front of it. There's a closer up detail from the backside of it. Bill and Nancy Barton wrote an article about spa weights for the BCA Bulletin. They reported that in the first half of the 19th century, Frederick Egerman discovered methods for applying salts to produce a stain on the glass after firing. This is another Baden weight. This is the Altes Schloss or Old Castle. There's a little more detail on it. Copper salts were used to produce the red stain. There are also ones with a yellow stain that were produced using silver salts. This shows a castle or something up on a hill. The next one has, I think, the same scene, but in a much more stylized, less detailed version. These methods were eventually stolen by other glassmakers, and so these aren't all from Egerman, but some of them may be. This one is for Ile Rousseau at Lake Geneva. Again, the top can be often very scratched, but you can get a better view of it from the back. I'm just amazed at the incredible amount of detail the engravers put in a weight like this. There's an island with a boardwalk heading over to it from the main spa or hotel. This is my personal favorite, probably because it's more of a natural landscape rather than a man-made one. This is for a marble mill in Rubeland. That's a German village. At the base of a hill. There's a bridge with a river beneath it. Here's a detail of it from the back. Animals such as the deer were often subjects for Bohemian engraved weights, and typically there would be somewhat of a landscape as the background. Here is another sort of deer in the forest weight. The style has been attributed to Brandenburg in Germany. The cutout with the deer and the trees is made of copper. When heated, like in the encasement process, copper can also often turn red. So this is why isn't copper colored, but copper is something that can be encased in paperweights fairly well. Here's another example of a forest scene. Uh, some flamework artist, Bohemian, German, somewhere Central Europe, probably. We've got stand of birch trees along with some mushrooms. So there were some nice landscape weights in the 19th century. Another paperweight technique was sulfides. Sulfides were constructed using a plaster-like material. The subjects in most of the 19th century sulfides were people, like this one for Queen Victoria from Saint Louis. But we also have this classic era Baccarat one with a hunter and a dog, again in a forest scene. That's from the 19th century. Here is a 20th century modern Baccarat weight for Mount Rushmore. I've seen very few landscape weights out of sulfide. Here's a couple. Some Bohemian glass factories would make sulfide plaques, look sort of like tombstones, many of them, and use them for photos. They're often adorned by flowers in the background, combing in the front, and so forth. A few of the sulfide weights also instead of people, had factories or villages. There's an inscription on the top left corner of the sulfide plaque that translates to greetings from Velké Karlovic. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, which is a village in what's the southeastern part of what's now the Czech Republic. Here is a one for Eastbourne, a coastal resort town in the southeast of England. It's a little bit different. There were many Central European glassworkers who emigrated to England and worked there. So this may have been made by one of them, or maybe by some English glassworker who learned it from them. This is not one of the more successful ones because of the bubbles and the photo's not that clear. Pinchbeck weights were made by taking a sheet of metal and sculpting or molding it to make various scenes. These scenes were then encased by a hollow glass dome. A number of these feature landscapes. This scene is very busy, but if you look at the very top, oops, backwards, you can see some buildings in a village and several horses. So I would count this as a landscape. Weights of this type are sometimes called Chinese whites. Images are painted on a white glass plaque using enamel paints, and then that's covered with clear glass. All sorts of animals and plants were subjects for these weights. This is a unusual one, and it actually is signed China on the top right. Since many of the vintage Chinese weights were imitations of European and American weights, I think this is actually a copy of one of those souvenir weights with the sailfish design we saw earlier for locations in Florida like Miami or Daytona Beach. Although landscape painting was not prominent in Europe until around the Renaissance, it was a mainstay of Chinese art for 1,000 years before that. So landscapes actually represent a fairly common subject among Chinese weights, unlike other types of weights. These range in size from miniature ones like in the bottom to the Magnum one on the top left. There's variety of, there are different shapes, profiles, different color palettes, different styles of painting. So there's quite a variety of these. So I'll be showing quite a few, so I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. There are grouped with this basic color palette. We've got blue mountains in the background, some pink buildings and vegetation, grass and hills in green with some black cross hatching. Another one with that same color scheme. Although you might not ever find two that are exactly alike, there are some scenes that were repeated. This is one of the more common uh, scenes. Same basic idea, but variations in the hills and the locations. This, I'd say, maybe is the most common design for the landscape ones. We've got a pair of sailing ships with mountains in the background. This is a different two sailing ship one. Some of these weights had people. Most commonly, it would be either someone fishing. Here's a couple fishing boat scenes. And here is another one. Sometimes it's someone walking with a staff. I particularly like it on this one, the person is crossing a bridge and you can see the reflection in the water underneath. I don't know enough about Chinese history and culture to know whether those were all men or men and women. This one is kind of indeterminate to me, but there are some that are meant to be women. I'm pretty sure the subject in this weight is a woman. And the next two pretty definitely are. The next two are same basic scene as each other, but with variations. They have a fence in the background, a woman posing in front of like a rock in the front with some trees or vegetation. Here is a different woman, but the same basic setup. The fence, the woman, the rock, and the trees. I've only seen a handful with more than one person in them. This is my most recent acquisition. The seller described it as a couple under a pergola. I think it's actually two people on a small fishing boat or a sampan. Here's another one with a pair of individuals. Look like they may be returning from the fields. I can't tell if it's meant to be a couple or parent and child. There are a number of weights with similar buildings in the background, and we'll be seeing a couple of those coming up later on. Here, these next few have a sort of a different style of painting, but they're still in the Chinese white category. Another person with a walking with a staff. I'm not sure what this person's doing. If that's the staff, they're just pointing at something. This one's pulling a boat, approaching that structure or passing by. This person's just admiring the blossoms in the trees. This is a smaller scale landscape than most of them. This is just a stand of bamboo with no hills or rivers or anything around it. Some of these were miniature weights, but they still packed a lot of detail into the painting. This is one of a mountain scene with a waterfall. Here we have a house or hut with a hill, and I think those are meant to be birds. This is a similar scene, but with a lot more detail, still a miniature. So a lot of detail packed in there. There are also some Magnum ones. There are many with sailing ships and fishing boats and so forth, but only relatively few with other vehicles such as uh, cars, trucks, or buses. I believe I saw one with a train once. This is a one with a design with a fort. I've seen a few of these. I think it's a fort. This is a house by a river. These are the sort of buildings in that way with the couple crossing the bridge. This is someone did a lot of weights of this sort. Here's a pair of them with basically the same view, but two different stages of a sunset or two different sunsets. This is again, these can vary quite a bit in the style and the color palette. A lot of detail though. This one has three sailing ships instead of the two. Birds. This is a similar sailing ships with, well, a smaller ship. We've got I think we see a person there, buildings in the background, trees and so forth. At first glance, this looks like a Chinese white. It's the same sort of scene, but this is what I call a Chinese clear. There's no white here. This design is simply painted on the back of a clear glass blank. These are relatively uncommon. Most of the ones I've seen have been landscapes, although I've seen at least one that wasn't. This one has a pair of ships. You can see the reflections in the water. It looks like it may be a foggy day. Costco is the Chinese Ocean Shipping Company. That might be what it says underneath the English translation. Here's another vintage Chinese weight. It's got three trees on it. This tree has the sort of blossoms that are commonly found in vintage Chinese weights. This is a 360 design. On the back side, on the right is, well, again, I think it's a bamboo tree. On the left, there's a tree. Its leaves are made up of the same sort of canes that represent feathers in the common Chinese peacock weights. So these weights can have red feathers like this one, green canes like the previous one. There are some in red and blue, and there's even a rumor of a purple one, but that might be a myth. This is a different technique than the Chinese white, although it is a color design on a white weight. This is called a fruit weight. The design is cut out from a metal die, and powdered glass or frit of one or more colors are used to fill in the die or stencil to make the design. Some of these are known as motto weights because they have sayings, like "To my mother" or "Light for all" in this lighthouse scene. One of the most common themes is Home Sweet Home. Besides the crimp roses and the umbrella weights, Millville is also known for their fruit weights. Millville in southern New Jersey. I think this is one of theirs, although fruit weights were made by many others. The designs vary from weight to weight, but some of them have common themes. Often they have the two paths coming together to the house. I think that might symbolize a marriage, two different families coming together. There's usually a chimney, often with smoke coming out of it. This one, I think, has a well in the front. Here is a different design. Still the two paths coming into the house. This is a more elaborate house with two chimneys. Maybe it's a richer family. This is a simpler design with a single path with less detail. Another common type of fruit weight was personalized ones. This one was for J.H. Cunningham. From the symbols, it looks like they were a Mason. Vineland, New Jersey is about 5 or 10 miles north of Millville, so this might be another one from Millville. So personalized fruit weights are also fairly common. What's uncommon about this one is it combines the two. It's a home seat home weight, showing the home and the two paths leading into it, with a name in frit on the top, Andrew Reiter, I think it is. This was another way old Millville umbrella weights were sometimes personalized, this by engraving. Again, this is home sweet home design, variations from the different ones. On the front facet, there's a monogram CM, the year 1910, and some flowers on either side of it. This weight for Lincoln's home, the die maker initially made a mistake and left out the second L in Lincoln. You can see on the bottom of the weight, bottom of the design, it says Lincoln with Lincon, and it's sort of crossed out and covered up with grass. I believe that's meant to be Lincoln there on the right side with a stovepipe hat. This is a log cabin. He might be chopping logs for it. This weight has a flat base with a porthole in it. Weights like this have been attributed to Corning, New York. I actually bought this weight at an antique shop in Corning while on a visit to the Corning Museum of Glass. Corning, New York is going to be the site of the next PCA convention in May 2026. Even though there was a defect in this die, it has been used for a number of weights. Here's a different color scheme. This is a white frit on a dark blue background. Here are the two examples side by side. So same frit, different realization. On the left, there's a squirrel, and on the underneath it, I'm not quite sure what that is. Looks kind of like a cannon. Don't know if it's a log or what it's supposed to represent. There are many fruit weights as souvenirs, but most of them just have the name of the place, like Coney Island or Washington, D.C., or in this old Midwestern one, Soldier's Home in Marion, Indiana. A few of them do have, though, the location depicted. This is for a San Francisco landmark, the Cliff House. In the front, you can see the Cliff House. The design is somewhat hard to make out because of the multicolored spatter as the ground, but in the back, you can see waves and one of the seal rocks. This is a clear picture of that scene from an old souvenir weight. Cliff House in the front, um, seal rocks in the back. It has been burned down a couple times and rebuilt. This is what it looked like a couple weeks ago. I've read it's currently being renovated, so it's not open to the public now. This is a different view. In the foreground, there's Ocean Beach. You can see why it's called the Cliff House. It's up there on the cliff with the seal rocks to the left. There were a lot of birds there on the seal rocks. I was looking for any sea lions or seals. I saw something black swimming in the water, and nope, not seals, unless they're Navy SEALs. This is another souvenir weight using a plaque for that same location, Seal Rocks. The top of the plaque says Seal Rocks. The bottom says San Francisco. There's a design of the rocks, I believe like a sun, maybe setting or rising. I guess it's setting since it's Pacific. On the top right with some maybe birds in the front. I've seen a lot of this type of plaque weight. I don't know who made them though. Typically, they have a rectangular plaque with a name, sometimes a date like this. So this is probably from the early 1900s. I've seen several that say San Francisco, and this one that says the National Ice Cream Company with an address in San Francisco. So I don't know if these were made somewhere in California or simply imported by some retailers in the Bay Area. Wilkerson Glass of Moundsville, West Virginia, is known for their creative frit designs. This has a sign, another house design, but also includes a plaque for Joyce Madrid. This is another example of a frit weight which actually shows the location it's a souvenir for. This is for Natural Bridge in Virginia. This is what it looks like in person. This is still a very popular tourist attraction in the western part of the state of Virginia. The very famous Thomas Jefferson is quoted as saying, "It's the most sublime of nature's works." Here is another view looking up from beneath it. This is another example of where the same dye was used with different color schemes for to make frit weights. None of these weights were signed, but the style of the weight with the colored ground filled with bubbles underneath is common to weights by Gentile Glass in West Virginia. So I think this is a Gentile product. Go to the gift shop now. Don't expect to see anything like this. What you'll see are typical stuff, t-shirts, caps, cups. But there used to be a variety of Natural Bridges souvenirs. I found this in an antique shop near the park, a Child's Pail. Of course, there's the standard type of souvenir weights with a photo or painting under a glass dome. And I also found this Natural Bridge souvenir weight on eBay. On the back, there's a partial Murano sticker. This was made with the same sort of technique as these weights that you see with cats, dogs, birds, and other um, things. The These were made by sort of transfers that are used on ceramics. This cat image is surrounded by a ring of a garland of Millefiori canes. Millefiori aren't used very much in landscapes, but there are some Murano weights which do attempt this. Some of them are kind of crude. This has canes for both the leaves on the tree and the grass. Here is a slightly nicer example. Some of these can be quite creative. I like the coloring in this one. Ferro and Lazzarini, that Murano furnace, was very creative in some of their landscapes. Some of them have this goldstone or aventurine in them. Here's another one with the goldstone. This appears, I think, to be a bridge over a canal. Trees in the foreground. This one has a moon or the sun overhead, that tree. There's also a series with Asian scenes. Sybil Jargsdorf's book, Paperweights, has several other the Asian scenes depicted. I'd like to get one of these sometime. Drew Abelhair, around 2008, made some environmental weights like this, which combined his Millefiori cane flowers with glass rocks. So these are not real rocks. These are all rocks that he fashioned. He made some larger landscape weights like this with the rocks and the flowers. Note the sparkly bits on the left and the right in the middle. He used bits of gold foil, which he crumpled up to simulate gold nuggets. He also used these glass rocks to make some larger scale landscape scenes. This one depicts a river canyon with clouds floating overhead. This is a different view of that same weight. Here we have a creek scene. Here's a side view of it. In some of his creek scenes, he included Murini fish. I couldn't find any fish in this one, though. But Canadian artist Christina Callahan has used Murini mountains and trees and buildings in some of her weights. Here's a mountain scene with water in front. Here is one with some buildings with rose canes around the side. This is a Venice scene with Murini buildings and some Murini buildings and Murini gondolas in front. This is my personal favorite. We've got the mountains in the front and the tree and the rose blossoms on it. Another Canadian artist, John Gooderham, was known for his miniature paperweights, his jewelry, and his buttons, like this one with a winter scene with a barn. Barns, farms, and cabins were common elements of plaque weights from Degenhart glass, Ohio. These plaques were often framed by for ice pick flowers. There's a close-up of the plaque with a cabin in the woods. Here's a different style of Degenhart personalized plaque, again showing looks like a cabin. This painted scene the painting was done by Ray Bichard. It has a farm scene with a rooster. In the bottom left of the plaque, it's signed Bichard. On the right is a D and a heart standing for Degenhart. This shows a river scene. This one is not signed. Besides the Degenhart ones, Bichard also made some for Moser with an M, but this doesn't have an M or Degenhart. The background is similar to a Degenhart weight, though. This is another style of personalized weight. These are attributed to B.F. Leach in Fallowton, Indiana in the early 1900s. Typically, they have water scenes, ducks, cattails, sailboats, and so forth. Some have a more elaborate scene. This one has a saying on it, "My faith looks up to thee," and it's for Mrs. A.F. Powell. This one is for a Navy man, William Daniels. It commemorates the Civil War battle of the ironclads, the Monitor and the Merrimack. Among the many hundreds or even thousands of designs from Caithness, a number of them depict landscapes. This one, designed by Helen MacDonald, has the Loch Ness. This one has abstract mountain scene by Alistair McIntosh. Looks like Frit Mountains on the inside and engraved mountains on the backside. This is part of an Impressionist Four Seasons series designed by Colin Terrace. Shows the same scene in four different seasons. This is the summer version. This is the autumn version. This is the two of them side by side. So there's a tree in the foreground, a mountain in the background, and some hills between them. This is the winter version. And this is the spring version. Winter version has a snow on the mountain. This one has just a little bit left. Those were designed by Colin Terrace, who also designed this Texas Skyweight. The oil rig and the moon and the buildings are gilded on the front facet with control bubbles on the inside. Caithness also made similar scenes for the skylines of Chicago and Seattle, and I believe locations in the UK also. Number of contemporary lampwork and torchwork artists have made lampshades or included them in their paperweights. This one I found in an antique store designed by made by David Salazar at Zephyr Studios. It shows a hill a road going up a hill, a road sign, clouds in the background. At the time I purchased this, I already had a small collection of Chinese whites landscapes, but I'd never seen a sort of a lampwork landscape. So this was new to me and sort of opened up the road for me to start collecting landscape paperweights of other sorts. Often the landscape is just the background for a bird or other animals. This was made by David's brother Daniel Salazar at Lundberg Studios. The flamingo has a marshy background. In this Jim Donofrio weight, the geese are flying over a beach or a lake shore. There are some distant hills in the background under the big sky for this hummingbird weight. The next few images are taken from L.H. Soman auction catalogs with their permission to fill in some of the gaps with weights I don't have in my collection, but I wish I did. Here's one of my favorite Donofrio weights with a macaw with a jungle background and some flowers on the branches sitting on. This is sort of a similar background. This is a William Manson senior snake coiled over a branch with a jungle background. This is one of Michael Hunter's motorcycle weights. They have different backgrounds. This is the only one I've seen with a waterfall in the back. The next two weights have mountainous backgrounds. This one with a panda in the front from Jesse Taj. This one of a bonsai tree with a mountain in the back, perhaps Mount Fuji. Myrwell Ward has made a number of similar scenes. There's this daytime one with the sun in the background, in front of the trees, and behind the trees with some birds and clouds. He's also made similar nighttime scenes. This Stephen Lundberg weight has a snowy forest in the foreground, snowy mountains in the background, moon. He often used dichroic glass to great effect in his grounds. This is a rare beach scene, also from Stephen Lundberg. Beaches are a very rare subject in landscape weights. I only recall seeing one other one. There are many undersea weights of coral reefs, tide pools, and so forth, but you don't see very many weights of the ocean itself. This is a stylized one, another Caithness sign by Sarah Peterson titled Sailing By. This is a Korea glass design with I think it's an island with birds flying over and clouds and waves. A.M. Dreyer of Hot Island Glass in Maui made some island weights. This is of the island of Maui. These are magnum weights, about 5 inches in diameter. You see the river of lava coming down from the volcano to the sea. Here is a similar weight for the big island. Again, these are magnum weights. This volcano weight was made by Glass Eye Studio. They made a number of geological formation weights. They had a mountain series. I think this was for Denali. They also did ones for Mount Everest, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier. I'm not sure if this is part of that series or just a mountain. Other geological features include a river canyon, a thermal pool, and this one is my favorite. It's a waterfall. It's designed by Roe Purser, which some of you may be familiar with from Noble Effort. This is another river canyon scene. The base is engraved R. Janison 06. I haven't been able to find anything online about them. This one, I'm not sure if it's a mountain range or maybe even a series of islands or one big island from R. Stefan. Bob Stefan was in Asheville, North Carolina. This one has a handmade in England sticker on the bottom of it. I think it was made by Langham Glass. This was another antique store find, unsigned, snowy mountain with a Swiss flag. This was a recent weight. Got it last year from Larry Hogue, who's up in Seattle, Washington. It's a winter scene, a snowboarder in trees. These are copper inclusions. You can see the copper color in the trees in the back. The front trees and the snowboarder turned red from the heat of the encasement process. Chris Below of East Providence, Rhode Island, made some of these tall weights. This has a tree on either side of the weight. It's a double-sided weight with flowers between the trees. Here's an abstract landscape. The base is signed Iron Canyon 1981. Another studio I'm unable to find any information on. This is the backside of that same weight. I've seen several images of weights from James Schaffstall from Hanover, Indiana, where he shows a stand of trees. Australian artist Mark Khalifa made some in a Outback series. This is a close-up of that same design. Sergio Vittorio Rodriguez made the coin for the mountain background in this collaborative weight. Matt Kelly lives in the mountains of Northern California and often includes redwoods in his weights. He's primarily a marble maker, but he has made some paperweights such as this one. John Gilvey is another marble maker who has made some weights, although this is a marble, a large marble or an orb. This depicts fruit trees, and this depicts cactus. So I've got several desert scene paperweights. This is from Al Leadham, who had a studio in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Here is a Ken Rosenfeld weight with cactus. Another Stephen Lundberg nighttime scene with showing a desert scene with cactus. Um, Scott Byers from Orient and Flume made this ovoid weight with cactus around a small hill. This is another ovoid weight. This is from Kathy Richardson. She did a series of these with trees at different seasons. This is the winter version. And here is a complete collection of the 4 different seasons. She also made some more standard shaped weights. This one has a tree with pink blossoms on it. This tree reminds me of a manzanita, the way the wood looks. It's got, in the back left, there are some purple mountains with snow caps. This is another one with a hint of a purple mountain in the background. This one has a, looks like a moon behind it. This weight was made by her son, Colin Richardson. It's a autumn scene, I believe. The leaves are turning color and falling. The tree is barely hanging on by its roots to a rocky outcropping. Rick Ayotte is most known for his bird weights. This is part of his Glasscape series in which he uses painted backgrounds. You can see the lampwork bird on top, the waves crashing below. Here is Rainbow Falls. These next photos are from the Bergstrom Mahler Museum of Glass. At the time, at least, I think these weights were either donated by Gordon Park or the current PCA president or on loan from his collection. He has an extensive Rick Ayotte collection. Here's Bird's Eye View. The bird's up there and the painted background is down below. Here is an autumn scene. Casey Eichhorn, the curator at the museum, sent me this photo. He's always been very helpful in providing images for articles and presentations. Most of the weights from wife and husband team Yafa Sikorsky Todd and Jeff Todd depict landscapes. There are some like these with trees of various sorts. Number of water scenes. This is the first one I got. Marsh at Sunset. It was a lucky antique store find. There's at the bottom of the image, there's a frog hanging onto a tree stump in a swamp. Dragonfly with cattails by the water. You really get a sense of the wind and motion in these next few. They've got a sailboat here. The flag on the dock is flying. The flowers are waving. This is one of my favorites. We've got a pile of fallen leaves being sucked up by a whirlwind in the stormy sky. And another one I wish I had to get from an image from the Selman catalog of a snowy mountains in a winter scene. I would classify most of the weights from Allison Ruza as landscapes. They can represent a park, a forest, a jungle, or even your own backyard. The one on the right is one of my all-time favorite weights. It was a commission she made for me. On the front, you can see our daughter with one of her dogs going after a frisbee. So she does commissions for people of their pets, their yards, anything really. These next few weights were photographed at her booth at Wheaton Arts at the last Paperweight Fest. So the lighting is not very good, but you can see what's going on. She paints 360 degrees around a glass blank, encases that in clear glass, and then may repeat the process so we have two or more layers to give a very dimensional effect. So these often generally have trees and other plants in them, variety of different scenes. It's a little hard to see from this angle, but there's a kid flying a kite. The kite's on the very right side of the weight. Couple in a rose garden. You can see the roses are outside of them. So they're on an inner layer, and then these roses are painted on an outer layer. Here's one with a butterfly jungle. I've got some more close-ups of this one. See the detail, all the detail on the plants, the very many butterflies she included in it. And here's a top view of that weight. So this was not meant to be a comprehensive list. I just wanted to showcase a lot of the ways that artists have been depicting paperweights with landscapes. Lastly, I'd like to thank all the people who've contributed images to enhance this presentation. Tom Killian, Gulsari Burkett, Sam Fisher, Sophie Boyron, LH Salmon Limited, our host, Eric Jump, and his website, The Paperweight Collection, and last but not least, the Bergstrom Mahler Museum, which is a must-see destination for any paperweight collector. So I'll turn this back over to you, Eric.
Well, thank you so much, Dana. It's always great to hear. Um, you know, it's always great to hear you speak. It's always great to hear, what people are collecting and what interests there are. Paperweights are one of these things that, there's just so much variety in paperweights, and I've said it before that there's something literally for everyone out there. And it's just really fascinating to see what all everybody's interested in, and I really appreciate that presentation.
Well, thank
Uh,
you.
I'm gonna go. Well, with that, Dana, I do appreciate you again. Thank you so much. Again, if any of you guys have any ideas for a presentation, or if you're itching to do a presentation in the future, please let us know. The next one we have scheduled is in November. I think the first or second weekend in November. We'll keep you guys in the loop, and that's gonna be with Joan Parsley, and she's going to be discussing the Joan Parsley project and Great Lakes Paperweights. And so that should be another good event. I look forward to seeing you guys all there again. We are also looking at scheduling out next year. I think I have two or three presenters already scheduled for next year. I definitely need at least one more. So if you are looking to present, or you have an idea for something that you want to hear, I can certainly find a presenter to fill that idea. So don't be hesitant to raise your voices, or if you have any questions or concerns about anything, or if there's any interest that you guys have, please let us know. And then also, make sure you follow us online. If you're not a member of the Paperweight Collectors Association, please, join us. I think that membership starts at $35, and that gives you full access to digital services online. Digital version of the bulletin, digital quarterly newsletter, and then of course this is free service to you as well. Without your guys' support, as patrons of the art and as members and as donors, none of this would be possible. So I appreciate just you turning up today. Thank you so much for everything you guys are doing, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.